AI is everywhere these days, from your smartphones to your cars, and nowadays it's making its way onto construction sites as well. It's an exciting process all around. But what happens when the AI system makes the wrong call? When an algorithm's recommendation leads to costly project delay or even an on-site incident? When that happens, who's actually responsible? And who picks up the tab? Ben Burry, Group General Counsel and Director of Gammon Construction, is here today to help us unpack all of that and more. As we're seeing more and more AI being used in construction projects and project management, what's the biggest challenge that you've seen happening? And are we inviting a new wave of legal liability by using AI more and more?
Take for example, one of the great things that AI has the opportunity to do in a construction company and in almost any company, but we'll look to construction, is to say, okay, Gammon's carried out hundreds of projects over the years. We use AI to look at our projects and look at all the lessons learnt. And then when we're going into another project, a new project, we'll generate a lessons learnt table from those lessons. And that's an extremely useful tool because it's impossible for a human being to go back and look through every single one of the hundreds of projects that a company has done and identify what are the lessons learned through that process. But of course, it's fraught with the potential for hallucinogenic outcomes. And those outcomes would be very difficult to identify for precisely the same reason why AI is such a wonderful tool, which is that a human being couldn't go back through all the lessons learned in every project. So if the AI spat out one lesson learnt that we all take on board, which actually was hallucinogenic, we wouldn't necessarily be able to identify it. And that's the sort of risk that I'm talking about. Another problem I think with AI is the potential for it to deprive construction projects of the very thing that's so frequently cited as the difference between a successful project and an unsuccessful project, which is people. So if we automate too much of the operations currently being carried out by people, we risk making it rather difficult for us to distinguish ourselves from our competitors and to distinguish a successful project from an unsuccessful project. So that's some of the sort of key issues I think we've got to watch as we go forward, and that's across the board in relation to safety and in relation to performance on a construction project.
As General Counsel of Gammon Construction, where have you drawn the hard lines on what AI can or cannot recommend, or can or cannot decide without human sign-off?
There's no particular hard lines, but I suppose when you're looking from a legal lens at AI, some of the issues that pop to mind, though these are not specific to any issue that we're dealing with in Gammon right now, but issues that pop to mind are insurance and copyright, and of course liability. I mean, if we are using AI on a project, for example, to deliver an improved safety result, and a mistake occurs, who bears the liability? Who bears the insurance risk? Is it the entity using the AI? Is it us as the main contractor? Is it the entity supplying the AI? Is it all of us? And it's not altogether clear. And in copyright infringement, I mean, if AI turns out to be copyrighted and is being used, we need to make sure we understand that. So there's a number of issues that arise from a legal lens, but they're not specific to Gammon at the moment. What we're doing now is we're excited about the opportunity in looking into it, but we're not right this moment drawing any lines one way or another.
From your perspective, would you prefer some sort of compliance protocols right now rather than after a crisis?
Well, we have compliance protocols in place in Gammon for all sorts of things, and many of those are fine-tuned regularly as we go through, and we will look at AI as you go along. So I don't think we are in a position right now to say that we need to implement something right now that could deal with AI. I also think it would be very difficult to do that. If you look at the way that governments, for example, are dealing with AI, they've enacted surprisingly few standards or regulations governing the use of AI. And if you look at, they really looked at private individuals to try and govern their relationships through contracts. But then if you look at the construction sector, the contracts we use are generally standard forms based on an original contract that might have been drafted in the 1990s. So there hasn't been very much in the way of contract changes to develop AI either. Take, for example, the Joint Contracts Tribunal, the JCT in the UK, published a new suite of contracts this year. And to the best of my knowledge, there's no reference in there to the use of artificial intelligence in construction projects. So I think it is a bit of a challenge. What we need to do as general counsel across every business is deal with everything on a case-by-case basis, with our general compliance policies that we have in place underpinning everything that we do.
We've all heard about how some of the lawyers getting into trouble using ChatGPT to write briefs and cited fake cases. I wonder, what do you consider the greatest danger when AI becomes more common in litigation or in legal practice in general?
Well, the greatest danger, I suspect we don't know yet, to be perfectly honest, because this is all too much of a new concept that we're starting to learn from. But you're quite right that we've started to see some very interesting developments in the courts around the use of AI, and the use of AI specifically for the purpose of producing written submissions in the common law world, in England and Wales, in the States and in Australia, not so much here in Hong Kong and Singapore, but it's only a matter of time, I suspect. And that's because when you produce those written submissions, you're generally trying to rely on cases to support your argument. And there are many thousands of cases. So if while you're using generative AI to produce your written submissions, it spits out a hallucinogenic case. In other words, a case that has no actual real example, but it looks credible, which is the case on a number of situations recently. Then that can get you into hot water. And I'm thinking specifically about a very recent case in England, which is called Ayindi in the London Borough of Haringey. And in that, the barrister and solicitors were referred to the Bar Standards Authority and the Solicitors Regulatory Authority, and they were very almost placed in contempt of court for failing to pick up the relevant cases as being hallucinogenic through the use of AI. And the problem also happens in Australia, it happens in the US as well. But I would say one thing, which is that no court has said you cannot use generative AI, to the best of my knowledge, in the use of written submissions. I think the point is that you have to be very, very careful about how you check it. Right.
Now bring all this together and switching gears to your role as General Counsel at Gammon Construction, the legal department head. Let's say you need future-proof, fresh talent today to your team. And right now, sitting in front of you, they're a construction lawyer with 10 years of experience and a fresh graduate who's just starting out. What will you be telling them, to future-proof them, to make sure that they're not left behind when AI shakes it all up?
Well, I think I'd tell them both the same thing in terms of AI, which is what I tell myself and my team. We have to try and play with it and learn about it and learn about the advantages that it may bring to us. There's an old saying that you hear all the time across these talks about AI, but it's very true, which is that AI won't take lawyers' jobs, but lawyers who know about AI may do. And I think that's true, particularly for young lawyers coming into the profession, when so much of the work that I did as a young lawyer, for example, in London, has been automated, and has actually been automated for many years. I mean, I remember paginating trial bundles when I was a trainee in London, and of course that went many years ago. So that's not a generative AI thing, it's just simply a matter of developing technology. So I think we all need to get on top of it, and we need to understand it. But I also think that, honestly, the amount of, if you look at a job interview, your ability to work with AI may take up 5 to 10 minutes of your job interview. But the vast majority of your job interview is going to be persuading your new employer that you've got good legal knowledge, you've got good emotional intelligence, you're a team player, you have the ability to think laterally, and that you're generally someone who the employer is going to want to work with. And I don't see any of those things changing fundamentally. So I do think it's very important that we all try and get on top of AI and understand what the advantages for AI might be for us in our business, so that we can streamline and make ourselves more effective. But I do genuinely believe that the core principles of what makes a good lawyer and what makes a good employee will remain, and I very much hope that will be the case.